and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. You guys joined me in Italy with the Volvo EX30. This is the first time I'm able to present this car to you. Super exciting. And in this video, we're gonna go super in depth. I'm gonna take you on a full tour front to back, tell you all the specs that we know for the US and the Euro version. And of course, typical out of spec style. We'll get nerdy, we'll start pulling panels up, see what we can find in this thing. It should be pretty cool. First of all, this is going to blow your mind. Wait until I tell you the price, wait until I tell you the specs. It might just change the car market in the US is my impression, because the value for dollar here is next level. So let's go on a full tour of the brand new Volvo EX30. Guys, here it is. You're looking head on at the new EX30. So before I tell you a little bit about this car, let's talk Volvo overall lineup. We've made a video together many times with the Volvo XC40 Recharge and C40 Recharge. Those are the two electric models on sale right now. And they're both really great in their own rights, but it's a combustion car. It's built on CMA, adapted for electric. And for that style of car, they're really fast, they handle great, they're good. They didn't really excel in any particular category. I thought XC40 was one of the best electric cars of the year as a package, but you can tell, okay, we're ready for the next generation. And now we're getting into the next generation of Volvo electric vehicles. So we've made a film together on the EX90, which is like this car put in a copy machine scaled to 200%. And now we're on the other end of the scale, the EX30. So if you guys just come around here, let me show you a quick walk around tour of the car just to give you a sense of size. Significantly smaller than EX90, of course, and smaller than XC40 Recharge and C40 Recharge. This is the smallest Volvo SUV today, and I think that's a good thing. There's really not a place in the market, by the way, for a small premium electric SUV. I mean, there's Hyundai Kona, there's Kia Niro in this sizing category in the US. It's significantly smaller than, Ioniq 5, EV6, Model Y, things like that. So this really fills a niche that doesn't exist at the moment. And I'm a fan of small cars. I love hatchbacks. And this is, sort of a SUV-ified hatchback, if you will. And I think they made the size great. I can't wait to show you the inside because I think you'll be blown away. But the big story here is this is a beautiful looking, really great spec'd Volvo electric SUV, and it's the price. I'm just gonna hit you with this right off the bat because I think you'll be just as shocked as I am. $35,000 US dollars in North America, well, in the US, I should say, and it's basically $34,950 MSRP starting. Can you get a car that's this nice, this premium, this high quality for that number? I'm not 100% sure. And if you just look at this 3/4 angle so you can see down the side of it, again, look at this and think about that starting price as something that's pretty wild. Now this one's of course spec'd out, it's got a few things on it. I'll walk you through the specs of what you actually will get for that $35,000 number, but just to put that in perspective, the Tesla Model 3 standard range, the cheapest Tesla you can get, the LFP, we rave about that car, that's $40,250. This is $5,000 less, and it has slightly more EPA range in that base version, expected, and like pretty blown away there. So, but then that brings up the topic of tax credits. We'll get into all the full, numbers of things. This car final production will be in China, so it won't qualify for the $7,500 tax credit like all Model 3s do, but it's really not a competitor to that. This is, of course, an electric SUV. So now that you've kind of seen the outside, let me tell you the specs that you got an idea of where this car sits in. It's EX90's baby brother. Volvo's going to go have a full electric lineup by 2026 or so. This is the lowest total carbon that Volvo's ever built in a vehicle. So its overall carbon cycle is relatively low. It's all based off European numbers, so I'm not sure what that looks like with our US energy mix, but could be interesting to do a study on that one day for sure. But specs. In the US, I'm going to stick just to our market for a second. We have two powertrain options. We have a single motor and we have a dual motor. And thankfully, Volvo put the correct motor, or I should say the motor on the correct axle. So rear wheel drive as standard, unlike XC40 and C40, when they launched, it was front wheel drive in the single motor. They've now switched. Volvo has listened to us. I don't think we had any influence on this, but thankfully, single motor, now rear wheel drive, dual motor, all wheel drive. And the numbers here are pretty crazy. So this will actually be the quickest accelerating Volvo ever. Just under, around 3.5 seconds, 0 to 60. I'll put the exact specs up here for you, 3.4, I think. Insane. So in terms of power output, you get a single motor rear will be 200 kilowatt power output, about 260 horsepower or so. Then in all-wheel drive, you'll have dual 160 kilowatt motors, so a 50-50 split. We've seen them do this with Polestar 2, similar, built on CMA as XC40 and C40. So you have two 160 kilowatt motors, and that's going to be pretty cool. So 420 something horsepower in something this size should be pretty fun. Well, you actually joined me back in the US right now to issue a bit of a correction, because Volvo sneakily updated some of the specs on this car after I had filmed the video. You see, just as reference, this is the original technical highlight sheet that Volvo provided me, which is on the twin motor performance variant of it. It had 211 horsepower front and rear motor. And I thought, okay, well, that's how they did it on XC40, C40, and Polestar 2 for the performance bits. But then after I filmed this video, late that night, I was out for drinks with my friends from Norway who were reviewing this car as well. And they're like, no, Kyle, you're wrong. It's not solid, same power front and rear. And I was like, no, look at the spec sheet. And then they said, no, look at our spec sheet. I was like, what is going on here? Is the performance spec different for Europe than not? The answer is, I just downloaded the same PDF as this off the Volvo Media site, and they have updated it now to match what the Norwegians were telling me. So you have to forgive all the power stuff here, because the total system power is the same. But you can see now it makes 268 horsepower in the rear, so it has that same 200 kilowatt rear motor as the standard car, but they add the 154 horsepower motor on the front. This is actually my preference. This is better because this means, from a performance standpoint, the car is going to be rear biased no matter the trim. It means that when you accelerate out of a corner, it's going to help rotate the car and get it to turn. And yes, I know people aren't really going to be shredding these, but there are a large number of Volvo driving enthusiasts out there that I think will really appreciate the drivetrain choice here in this vehicle. Every time I'm still seeing some things trickle in about this car, it's just getting better and better. And so you have to forgive some of the powertrain stuff. In this video, again, I just was going off the information that I had, but there you go. It just seems like larger rear motor in the all-wheel drive one, or maybe not larger, but at least juicier rear motor. That's my preference. Nice job, Volvo, and definitely an improvement from even when I shot this car in the studio. Let's get back with more hopefully correct information for you. And then basically let's talk about branding and how those specs will lay out. So the single motor variant is going to be called the single motor extended range, and that will have a 69 kilowatt hour gross battery pack, about 64 usable, so fairly large buffers. It's an NMC battery pack. In Europe, there will actually be a single motor standard range. We're not going to get it in the US, and that, I believe, will be LFP. It'll be like 51 kilowatt hour gross, 49 usable. So that could be an interesting option for our market. Big batteries, I'm all about it. That sounds good. Range is going to be awesome. 275 mile EPA expected. All these cars do pretty well, kind of 70 mile an hour cruising. It'll be a permanent magnet rear motor, so it should be fairly efficient while cruising. And then there's only a 10-mile penalty when you go for the dual motor performance, roughly. And I believe it's going to be a dual permanent magnet system, so no clutch disconnect or anything that I'm hearing about. I'll update you if there is, of course, but that all sounds pretty sweet. Before we get into the charging specs and everything, why don't you guys pop up here? You got to take a look at the interior before we go too far into this video, because it's just great looking. We don't want our camera operator to fall down, but pop on over here, Hannah, if you will, and just take a look on the inside. And yeah, super cool looking inside. We'll go through a full tour, of course, I'll show you how the room is in the front and back, but just wanted to give you a view. Really nice recycled plastic materials throughout this whole thing. Man, I just can't get over how cool this car is. You guys know I'm a Volvo nerd, so of course I'm gonna love it, but it's just, oh, so cool. Take a look inside the charging port. Let's talk charging performance. I believe it will have a 48 amp onboard charger. The specs haven't been released, but that's what they've done with, EX90, I believe will have the same thing, and so that's to be expected. But the charging performance on the DC side is gonna be really neat. So again, 64, 65 kilowatt hour usable isn't a ton of energy, but it'll charge at 153 kilowatt peak. So that's if you get the battery, nice and hot, down low, preconditioned, which it'll have en route preconditioning, plug-in charge. I am not sure, we'll have to see. But then also great route planning. So we've seen that with Volvos in the past. Route planning is one of the best systems out there, which is so important in an electric car. So it'll warm the battery up as you get to a charger, you plug it in, slap it in, 153 kilowatts, but it's all about the curve, not so much the peak. So they say 26 and a half minutes from 10 to 80%, which isn't mind-blowing. If you compare that to some of the eGMP stuff, it's almost a full 10 minutes shorter than that, but it is usable. It's actually like nothing to complain about here. In terms of how people use their electric cars, you pull up, you want to go grab a snack when you're charging on a road trip. 80% still relatively a high charge rate to charge to on a road trip, a DC fast charger. So I expect most of your charging stops, 15, 20 minutes in this car, something like that, and then you're off to the next. Really can't wait to take one on a road trip, do some adventures in this car, and that'll be sweet. And what I'm really loving, of course, is the lack of penalty when you seem to go for the dual motor performance, because I think I'm not sure what the mix will be in the US between single motor or dual motor, but I think most people are going to be fine with the 5.1 second 0 to 60 rear drive car. I mean, unless you're living in the northern climates where you need all-wheel drive for snow or slippery conditions, then yeah, probably standard car is fine, and that'll keep you closer to that starting price. I'm not sure how much all these options will add up to, but the performance variant is gonna rip. I mean, this thing seriously is gonna be quick. I don't know what brakes it'll have or suspension layout or all that stuff. That will all come as we can drive the car. But yeah, wow, fastest accelerating Volvo ever. And it's like in this small little SUV, super pumped. Okay, so any other drivetrain specs I should tell you about? You got the battery pack, 69 kilowatt hour gross, and the big one, single motor, sounds like it's gonna be the volume model. Dual motor should be pretty sweet. Let's get into the tech. Let's get into the interior. And I guess we'll walk front to back. So let me show you under the front trunk. If one of our Volvo friends wouldn't mind opening it for us, we'll swing up front as they get the front trunk opened. Yeah, so looks pretty nice. Headlights up here, of course, will not do the EX90 sliding thing. That should be pretty cool to see on that particular one, but it's a very expensive headlight unit, so no surprise that they've replicated the style here with this Thor's hammer, but it won't actually pop open or close. You can see parking sensors throughout. We'll get into the driver assistance stuff in a bit. Now, all of the plastics under here I don't expect to be final production yet. They're not grained or anything, but just to give you a sense of size here for the front storage compartment, you can keep, in this particular one's a Type 2 charging cable for the Euro version. Really loving this little pattern depicting, I don't know, I guess this is what people think of when they think of Sweden, or at least this is what Volvo wants you to think of when they show you Sweden. Really cool space under here. Also a few little things I'm noticing. Typically these show cars are pretty highly spec'd, but I'm not seeing any electronic connections to the dampers, so I'm not expecting adaptive damper. We're still some time away for this car to come, so there's a lot of information to come out on it. And so yeah, it's still early days for sure. But I do want to tell you guys, you should keep an eye on a great YouTube channel. My friend Chris Rifa in Norway, he's a huge Volvo enthusiast. He'll actually be filming this car, so check out his video if you haven't yet. But Chris will keep you sort of updated as every news story comes out on the entire electric Volvo lineup. So every time there's a news release or stuff like that, you know, we'll come out for the big releases and drive the cars. But if you really love this thing and want to follow every little bit, check out my friend Chris's channel. I know he'll have videos literally every week on EX30, EX60, EX90, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the front of it. Let's go down the side of the vehicle here. Door handles, traditional style, really nice feeling door handles. Really solid build. Again, it's an early production car and it feels super nicely put together. I like the standard door handles. I don't like all these weird things that fall into the car. That actually doesn't affect aero all that much in my impression. And again, still getting huge range out of this vehicle. I'm not sure if they're gonna run a 5-cycle or 3-cycle, but yeah, looking pretty nice. And I guess let's just sit inside really quick. So, sitting in the seat here, really neat. First of all, let's talk about this control right here. This is your seat at height adjustment. So I can twist it back to raise or lower the front portion of the seat. I can hit it straight up or down. Well, this one, it works on the driver's side. This one doesn't seem to work, but basically to raise the whole seat up or down. I can slide it forward and back. So that's how the square works. And then I can, of course, tilt the backrest just by rotating this. So that works pretty well on the driver's side, not so much on the passenger side. I don't think they expected me to sit in this seat. But look at the interior. This is so cool. Huge view out this whole area right here. Nice. Everything's as recycled as can be. Full animal-free interior available as well. Really neat air vents with this little loop where you can adjust how it's all going to go here. There's 4 different interior packages. I'm not sure what they all look like yet, but I'm loving this one. Even just this fabric material on the back of the seat, the way that it's blended with this sort of synthetic leather, if you will, is really nice, very high quality. Volvo always does great on the interiors, and I'm loving all of this. I'll sit in the driver's seat in just a second, but just here on the software side, relatively large display here, no central display for the driver. The only little thing here is a eye tracking for driver assistance, which will work just like a Tesla. You just pull down on this twice and it'll activate lane centering, and Volvo's Pilot Assist Gen 2, which we haven't really played around with yet. EX90 will have something similar. But here you have Google Maps, great route planning. We know that because their cars currently do. You can set your AC or DC fast charging limit, in terms of amperage on the AC side, in terms of overall state of charge limit. I think Volvo typically recommends a 90% state of charge daily charging limit. Again, this one's sort of pre-production. They didn't really want me showing you everything in here, so I won't do that, but everything okay, all looks good. It's sort of just a pre-programmed system here, if you will, that's not ready to be shown. There's some other cool things in the interior, which I'll show you here in a second, but just to give you an idea of like the space, the seat comfort, the seats are so nice. I don't want to get out. I guess while I'm kind of sitting here, I really want to tell you what's bad about this car. Like, what am I not loving? Where are the glaring issues? And I think the big only one I can come up with is it's not built at their South Carolina factory. The China-built situation means it won't qualify for the tax credits. It will on a lease, so their lease number might be really crazy on this. But at least for a full sale, nothing for China right now. I would love to see these be built in South Carolina. Aside from that, I don't think there's literally anything to complain about. It is so cool. Back seat review, let's take a look. So this was always the concern, because if we look at C40 or XC40, they're a bit tight in the back. And what's really interesting to me is I feel like I have the same amount of room in the EX30 as I do in the XC40. I mean, it's way bigger than you would think on the inside. Headroom for days, no issues with headroom at all. This beautiful glass roof, not sure if that will be standard. Again, if they're coming in at $35,000 starting price in America, I don't know how they're gonna content this car. We don't know. All I can say is, even if you get one for 45, 48, just a guess, for a spec'd out performance, this is a lot of car for the money. It's a legitimate performance car at that point. Really nice door handle. Absolutely loving this. Nice sort of chrome work down here. Love this more than piano black. Cool recycled materials down here. Speaker grill. All of this is padded as well, so if you have stuff in the door pocket, it's not going to rattle around, which is great. All looking nice. If you guys come in here and just take a look at these window switches, you can see there's no window switches on the door. They're actually here in the center, so that works well. 2 USB-C ports as well, just a little cubby. And then there's also another smaller cubby down here that can tilt up, just so like if you have loose change in there, you can get your stuff. Or it's also completely removable. And there's another depiction of, I love all the Easter eggs of what Sweden looks like in the eyes of Volvo. You get moose, clouds, trees, and lots of horizontal lines. Oh, and some vertical lines. So just lines everywhere in Sweden. We'll throw that up. Really nice seat back pocket here. Again, very thick padding on this. I've never actually seen such a thick padding on the seat back pocket. The materials are great. And again, this passenger seat's really far back and I have plenty of room. So this is next level cool. Next level cool. I mean, really sweet. I need to insert another correction. When I say I have plenty of room, mostly talking about the headroom there. Obviously, you can see my knees were quite tight in the back at EX30. I believe that's because the passenger seat was pretty far back, but also talking to Chris about the back seats when we went out for drinks after, he mentioned that he put the driver's seat in his seating position, and I'm taller than Chris is, and he said it was pretty tight in the back seat. So my impression of the back seat, headroom, shoulder room, I think that's all great, and that's what really shocked me about the car. I think I should have done a better job to tell you, okay, maybe knee room isn't that good. It definitely wasn't here, but I was like, oh, well, the passenger seat could be moved forwards. Perhaps the back seat's going to be tight, but it's also tight in XC40 and C40. Those cars are like way too tight in the back. So I don't know, but that's my little correction. You'll have to try it out when we can get to dealers, and I'll make sure to do a better backseat review the next time I can play around with the car. I'm not sure if these exact wheels will come to the US, if they've been sort of built for our market, but let's just take a look here. This one's on 20-inch 245 40/20. They're in the Goodyear Efficient Grip Performance SUVs. Yeah, this is probably not the final tire. They'll go through probably a Volvo optimization. This one is a Volvo OE tire though, so maybe it's off of one of their other cars. Maybe it is ready, I'm not totally sure. But 245s in the front and rear, so a square setup, which is great. That's something I'm really looking forward to seeing is when you go for, you know, I know I'm bouncing around a lot, but when you go for the performance spec and you have dual 160 kilowatt motors, that's a lot of power. And if you have a square tire, it should like not really understeer much, but also not be a drift machine, of course. So it's going to be a really competent, safe handling, fun vehicle to drive. And this is sort of a new character that we've started to see with electric Volvos. C40, XC40 Recharge, again, Polestar 2, similar underpinnings with CMA. Fast, competent, actually fun. Something Volvo's never really had before. I mean, they've had Rs, and I love all the old, you know, R wagons and stuff like that, but just really exciting that they are going all in. They're like, electric doesn't need to be slow and boring. Let's take a look in the trunk. Actually, if you guys come over here, you'll see this little button hidden in the back is how you open the trunk. So let's push that right there. Trunk will open. Nice. Quite a high loading floor actually, but not too bad. It just seems like, you know, they probably stuffed a lot of batteries under here. And there's also a relatively nice size underfloor storage. If you come on over here, you can take a look. This rear parcel shelf does fit in the rear because this ends up in everyone's garage when you don't use it. Now you can actually keep it with your car, which is nice. And one thing Volvo does on all of their now electric SUVs, or at least we saw it on the EX90, is the Will It Fit board. So it gives you all of the dimensions of the inside. It can tell you sort of what you can buy at IKEA that will fit. Really love all of this, super cool. While we're back here, let me fold the rear seats down for you. And what I'm gonna do is actually just kind of push in this little button and you'll see, there we go. And if you pan down this way, you'll see it's a completely flat surface all the way down to the end, which is great. So absolutely loving that. Very little rake on that seat. And there is a surprising amount of room in here. You can see even wideness. It's not like it comes to here. The trunk actually expands in. So very pleased with the storage capability, all looking good. And yeah, like feels to me about the same size as C40 on the inside, maybe and with a smaller package. Loving the light design here, very, again, reminiscent of EX90. This is the new design language of the back of Volvo where you have this vertical slat and then this C shape that comes around the back. I think it's very distinctive, very classy, nothing showy, the way a Volvo should be. And now it's time to sit in the driver's seat. So why don't you guys hop over. I'm gonna put you guys in the back right, actually. And that way I can present the front of the car to you. So let me raise the seat up for Hannah. Thank you for filming, Hannah. Jump on in there. Heading over to the driver's seat now. And in we go. Really nice door thunk. Just pushing the seat back a little bit here. reclining back. What a view out the front. First of all, cannot get over how comfortable this seat is. Super, super nice. We have some recycled plastics as well. This beautiful view out the front. This sort of squircle steering wheel design. Maybe not so into that, but it's nice. It's thin. It has a great material. I think this is all really cool. Again, you have your switch gear right here, which is very reminiscent to how a Tesla works. No start button, nothing like that. You get in, let me show you the key. It's a little card. You basically just get in, have your card, tap it, and you're good to go. Through an update, I'm not sure at launch or how that'll all work, you'll actually be able to use a digital key on your phone. So this is similar to other vehicles that we're familiar with, where you can get in, put it in drive, and go right away. And so that'll be really, I think, just the way it should be. Super fantastic. Looking at the display here again, it's positioned well. It'll be curious to see what you guys think about not having a center instrument cluster. For me personally, it's something I'm used to with Model 3, of course. I actually don't think it was ever a problem. But some of you guys may, so leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about seeing your gear, your speed, everything over here. Not really sure. The car's charged to 92% right now, but I'm not sure if it'll use a rated range calculation or guessometer. These things will come. Volvo's actually been consistent with software updates on their existing electric cars, and they've been adjusting how they're displaying range and now round trip range. And so they're really listening to customer feedback. And I actually think making the cars much better from a software perspective. So very pleased to see that. If we look here in the center console, you'll see two little switches. These are your left and right window controls. And you also have a lock and unlock situation here. And the interesting thing with the rear windows are it has an ID4 switch for the rear. Hannah, what do you think about that?
Not my favorite part of the car.
That's a mistake. I'm sorry. So that is one negative about the car. I really, just from using this in ID4 a bunch, what you have to do is if you want to roll down the rear, you got to click rear and then the window switches will control the rear. Now I'm not seeing if you push and hold if it does any flashing thing like the Volkswagen. So hopefully they make it so you can push and hold rear and then control all the windows from the driver switch. That's how Volkswagen got around it being annoying. This is also much snappier to respond than the Volkswagen. So, okay, maybe it'll be better. But to me, it's always like, let me roll down the rear window, hit this button. Ah, the front's down. Oh, now let me roll down the rear. And then, so I think that could use some optimization. I think, my suggestion to the Volvo engineers would be to have a push and hold function on this so that the driver switch can control all four. But again, if we're just niggling about a window switch control, and that's really the main problem with the car, and like it's just a usability thing you'll get used to, it really shows how well they've nailed this whole package, because that is about it. Everything else, the size, it feels nice and airy in here. The material quality is great. I don't know how it'll drive, but I think them optimizing it with that rear biased unit, it's all good here. I'm noticing an HK sound system branded just up here on the dash. Looks like there's almost a sound bar effect across the front. I'm not sure how many speakers or how much power. I'm not expecting the big Bowers and Wilkins like the EX90 is going to get, which I cannot wait to experience because Volvo's always put an incredible system in their car. You guys know in the Polestar 1 we have the Bowers and Wilkins and it bumps. It's so good. There's also some cup holders up here as well because there looks to be none, but they're hidden. I just pull back on this little switch here and boom, there they are. How sweet is that? There's also a tiny little glove box right up here, and by tiny, it's actually not. It actually goes pretty deep. So that is a nice situation. Love that, and I like how they even outlined a little coffee cup for where you put your cup holders. Thank you, Volvo. Not sure what cup holders would be used for. There's also a halfway position if I lock it in here, so you can have just one, which is great, and then it can go away completely. That's a really nice design. Two wireless phone chargers down here. This little bit flips up as well with two USB-C ports. I'm not sure of the power output, but probably it's somewhere 30 watts would be my guess. I'm not sure. They didn't say it would be a power delivery port, but it should get the job done. So I am okay with all of that. And I guess what else is there to tell you? From a software side, just from a daily usability thing, you'll have all the apps you need. Get in the car, load up Spotify, put in your destination. It'll do route planning. It'll do preconditioning in the wintertime on the way to a charger. And that is kind of all an electric car needs to do. It just needs to work and be fully optimized. It needs to have a good phone app. and Volvo's proven that they've really worked on all of these things. So let's jump outside. I'll summarize the car for you, and then we'll wrap this video up. Well, there you guys have it, the Volvo EX30. This is a really cool car. I mean, again, from my perspective, living in the EV world, I'm not sure this car even has any direct competition. The price and value for having a taller vehicle, having all of this premium equipment in there. Again, we have to look at the spec sheet when it comes. I imagine it'll be decontented from what we're looking here slightly, but I think it's gonna be pretty amazing. And even if you guys just come down and look at the side of the car, like the size isn't small. Volvo's, yeah, of course, saying this is the smallest SUV. My impression is it's, at least because we're here in Italy, everyone's driving these little tiny things around. This is a really good sized car, and it's perfect if you're single or have a small child. Like, it's perfect for this kind of situation. So I wouldn't let the size deter you if you're looking for something a little bit bigger. It's certainly gonna be one hell of a value in the marketplace. I think they're gonna shake it up. Reservations start right now. So you can go, I guess, to volvocarusa.com. I'm not sure. I'll leave a link when I find it. You'll be able to reserve one of these things immediately. And deliveries maybe Q2 2024 is what we're thinking. But I think we're gonna see them everywhere. I think they're just gonna, they have nailed it, and just can't get over the performance, the specs, the range. Again, 265 miles of range in the all-wheel drive with 420 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, and something that looks this great with driver assistance. That's one thing I haven't told you yet. It's got all the driver assistance, all the safety stuff you would expect from Volvo. Lane centering, adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring. Can't wait to do all that. We'll run it in a hogback challenge as soon as we can, but it'll be next year, so we still have a long ways to go. Like I mentioned, follow Chris's channel. I'll leave it in the description below if you want really hardcore updates from the Volvo EV side. He's doing a great job keeping everyone informed, and also a great friend of mine. And there you go, the Volvo EX30, leaving you now from Italy. I'll see you on another one soon. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you're gonna reserve one in the comments below. Bye-bye.